Hey, my name is Madeline Underwood. I'm going to be presenting my lesson plan today. So, my lesson plan is over the scientific method, and we're going to be performing an experiment as a hands-on project during the lesson. So, my audience is going to be my 10th grade biology class. My objectives, the students will be able to follow the steps of the scientific method in the usual order, and then the students will have a basic understanding of what each step is. Okay, so for the lesson that I'm wanting to go over with my students is going to be about the scientific method. So in the scientific method, it's just a series of steps that a person goes through in order to answer a question. So the first thing that I would want the students to do is to think about the steps to making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So with making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you first get out the bread, then you get out the peanut butter and jelly, a plate, and a butter knife. You think about all the things that you need, and then you think about how you're going to put it together. So I would want them to walk me through how they make a peanut butter jelly sandwich. Now, not everybody's peanut butter jelly sandwich is going to be the same. Some are going to put more peanut butter, some are going to put more jelly, some may use Nutella instead of peanut butter. There's no telling how many different ways somebody can make their peanut butter and jelly sandwich. The scientific method is the same way. Although we all have the same steps of doing things, we may do them in different orders. We may do them in different ways, but it is still the same step-by-step process as making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Okay, so with going over the scientific method, there are 5 main steps that you go through in order to get to your conclusion and get the data that you need. So there's making an observation, you form a question, form a hypothesis, which a hypothesis is an educated guess. So it's not just a guess that comes from what you know, it's a guess that you look back on the information that you have gathered, information you've researched, so the information that you have gathered that you know for fact to be able to make the guess that you're about to make. So I like to tell my students that when you think hypothesis, you think educated guess. The next part is you actually have to conduct the experiment. After the experiment, you're going to get all of the data that you've collected and you're going to form your conclusion. So I have this chart here that I like my students to go through anytime we do any kind of experiment or anytime that we're thinking about a process of how maybe a theory was formed. I have this chart here that I like to go through because it shows how we can get to certain parts of the scientific method and then shoot back to what we need to redo. And it's just a good way for them to simplify what we're going over. Okay, so the activity that we did to do a hands-on experiment with the scientific method was we used Jell-O and we were learning about the enzymes in the pineapples that keep the Jell-O from setting up. So what my students did is they took the list of the scientific method and they went down throughout the process of the experiment. They followed the steps of the experiment and they were able to see how they were made observations, they formed their hypothesis, they did their experiment, and they were able to form their conclusions based off the data that they gathered. The assessment for this was that I handed out worksheets as they did their experiment and they had to write down what they went through after each step and what they observed. And I was able to see how they followed along with the scientific method throughout the experiment. So the connections to the theory that I use is the schema theory. So schemata is essentially the background knowledge that you have. So they took that background knowledge that they had about making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and they were able to connect that to the scientific method in science. So the type of schemata that I mainly focused on in this lesson was mainly their cultural schemata and their linguistic schemata. So I have this chart here that I really like.
about going from concept to concrete to connect when we are thinking about going about their schemata and using that theory to be able to conduct a lesson in science so that they can connect it back to something that they already know. All right. Thank you for your time.